The first encounter. The Carthari had cataloged 4,327 sentient species before they ever set eyes on humanity. By then, they believed there were no more surprises left in the galaxy. Every species, without fail, had followed predictable patterns. The discovery of fire, the harnessing of agriculture, the rise of industry, and eventually the leap to the stars. Civilizations followed neat lines of logic, a progression that could be charted, graphed, and stored in the great libraries of Carther. So when survey ship Immaculate Logic entered Sol space, the Carthari expected nothing unusual. A mid-tier, oxygen-breathing species on a blue-green world. Technologically noisy, yes, with a clutter of satellites and primitive stations, but nothing out of the ordinary. That expectation lasted exactly 12 minutes. An unwelcome puzzle. Report, Commanded Scholar Primus Veldar, his 3 eyes flickering across data streams. The ship's sensors fed him chaos. There appear to be... The technician hesitated, unsure the instruments were malfunctioning. Nearly 200 independent polities on the planet's surface. None united. Many in conflict with one another. Veldar's frills stiffened in confusion. 200? Impossible. A species at this level of technology must have unified under one planetary administration. Otherwise, coordination for orbital construction would be... Yet they have... The technician interrupted nervously. Multiple nations have placed machines into orbit. Not one banner, but many. Some cooperate. Others compete. Veldar's secondary heart skipped a beat. A fractured world building starships? A contradiction. His people had a word for such things. Anomaly. And anomalies were dangerous. Contact attempt. The Carthari sent a signal. Carefully worded. Perfectly translated. Impossible to misunderstand. To their horror, the humans immediately misunderstood. Some governments hailed them with open arms. Others declared the message a hostile act. A few dismissed it as a hoax. Within hours, human media broadcast the signal worldwide, and talk shows debated whether the aliens were real, a prank, or some government conspiracy. Veldar, watching from orbit, recorded in his journal, "The human capacity for doubt is extraordinary. They question reality itself, even when it stands before them." Observation from orbit. Days passed, and the Carthari ship observed more. Humans argued incessantly, on screens and assemblies, even in the streets. They protested their leaders, mocked their rulers, and broadcast their disagreements for all to see. Among Carthari, dissent was dangerous, something hidden or erased. Among humans, it was celebrated. They turned disagreement into sport, laughter, even art. Veldar could not look away. Scholar Primus. One of his aides asked, "Should we classify them as unstable?" Veldar hesitated. "They are not unstable," he said slowly. "They are complicated. The human paradox." One evening, their sensors tracked a war. 2 human nations exchanged fire across borders. Shells falling, soldiers dying. The Carthari marked them as a violent, dangerous species. But the very next day, they watched humans rush to aid a region struck by an earthquake. Supplies, food, and volunteers poured in from across the world, even from nations at war with each other. Veldar's frills quivered with disbelief. "They kill one another," he murmured, "and then save one another. They are both destroyer and rescuer, often in the same breath. How does one categorize such a species?" The journal entry. That night, Veldar recorded his first official entry for the Library of Carther. Humans defy logic. They exist in multiplicity, never singular. They build while destroying, unify while fracturing, hate while loving. Unlike other species, their progress is not linear but chaotic, as though they thrive in contradiction. I do not yet know if this makes them weak or unstoppable. And so... the galaxy's most meticulous record keepers encountered the galaxy's most confusing species. It would not be the last time humanity overturned everything they thought they knew. Strength in contradiction. For centuries, the Carthari had classified survival as a straightforward measure. The more stable and orderly a species, the stronger its chance to thrive among the stars. Stability was strength, or so they thought. After only weeks of observing Earth, That assumption was already beginning to crumble. A world that shouldn't work. Scholar Primus, one of Veldar's junior researchers, reported, "Our planetary survey is complete. The human biosphere is puzzling." Veldar turned 3 eyes toward the holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked deserts, icy poles, mountain ranges, deep jungles, harsh zones, death zones. But there, within those red zones, the impossible blinked back at him. Humans lived in them. Villages in Arctic tundra, where winters could kill in hours. Cities in burning deserts where water was rarer than gold. Outposts clinging to mountains where oxygen was so thin no Carthari could have survived. "They should not be alive in these places," murmured Veldar. "And yet they flourish." He studied further. Ocean platforms, underground bunkers, even metal shells floating in orbit. Wherever nature tried to kill them, humans answered not with retreat, but with invention. It was as though their fragility forced them into brilliance. The crash. The revelation became undeniable the day the immaculate logic suffered an accident. While performing a close orbital maneuver, a miscalculation caused a shuttle to shear away from a mothership. The craft plummeted through Earth's atmosphere and crash-landed in a remote desert. Veldar dispatched a rescue drone immediately, but before it could even arrive, humans had already reached the crash. The downed Carthari scout emerged from the wreckage to find a half-dozen humans waiting. They carried primitive tools, spoke in a babble of languages, and argued loudly about how to help. "Water," one shouted. "No, oxygen first," another insisted. A third waved his arms. Electronics, keep the thing from exploding." To the Carthari pilot, the noise was incomprehensible. But amid the chaos, the humans acted. They tore cloth into bandages, used scrap metal to brace the shuttle's hull, and even argued about which fuel might substitute for the alien craft systems. It was crude, it was frantic, it was utterly disorganized, and it worked. By the time the drone arrived, the humans had stabilized the pilot and patched the shuttle enough to prevent a catastrophic explosion. Confusion in the report. Veldar examined the incident report with disbelief. "Explain to me," he demanded of his staff, "how a disunited, untrained mob of locals repaired technology they could not possibly understand." One of the aides hesitated. They did not understand. They improvised. Veldar stared. Improvisation is the act of the desperate. It never succeeds. But the pilot, still alive because of it, contradicted him. "Scholar Primus," the wounded Carthari said softly. They had no plan. Yet every time one failed, another suggested something new. They argued constantly, but each argument produced another possibility. Somehow, their disorder was their strength. Veldar felt his frills tremble. Disorder as strength? It was a concept that made his stomach knot. The debate. That evening, Veldar convened his research team. "These humans are not orderly," he began, pacing the chamber. "They do not coordinate like a hive. They do not obey like a collective. And yet, through contradiction, they succeed." A junior scholar raised a hand. "Perhaps their strength lies in diversity of thought. Where we seek uniformity, they embrace difference." Another scoffed. "Or perhaps they are simply reckless animals stumbling into luck." Veldar silenced them both with a heavy glare. "No, this is not luck. It is the pattern. Chaos, yes, but consistent chaos. They thrive not in spite of their contradictions, but because of them." He touched the console and dictated his next journal entry. "Humanity is adaptable beyond reason. Every environment, every challenge, every disaster becomes fuel for their ingenuity. They do not break under strain. They bend, twist, and reshape themselves until the impossible becomes survivable. Their greatest weakness, their fragility, has become their sharpest weapon." A growing unease. Yet even as Veldar recorded the words, unease gnawed at him. If humans could adapt to deserts, to ice, to fire and vacuum, what else could they adapt to? Could they, in time, adapt to war against the galactic empire itself? He dismissed the thought at once. No fractured, contradictory species could ever threaten the Carthari dominion. And yet he found himself staring out the viewport at the blue-green planet below, wondering if one day those very contradictions would spread beyond their world and change the galaxy forever. The madness of courage. By now, the Carthari expedition had compiled months of observations. Humans were contradictory, adaptive, unpredictable, a puzzle species. But what Veldar discovered next was something he could neither catalog nor rationalize. It was madness, the reports of war. The immaculate logic intercepted transmissions from a human battlefield. Two nations, neighbors with a history of conflict, had escalated into open war. Veldar watched the feeds. Trenches carved into mud, skies blackened with smoke, soldiers shivering in the cold. The numbers alone were absurd. One side fielded barely a fraction of the forces of the other. They were hopelessly outgunned, outnumbered, encircled. By all logic, they should have surrendered. Any Carthari commander would have. And yet, the humans fought on. They sang songs in the mud, their voices ragged but loud. They painted symbols on their helmets, as if daring death to come find them. Some joked, as artillery shells rained down. Veldar's aide stared in silence at the broadcasts. What are they doing? One finally whispered. Veldar could only answer truthfully. They are choosing defiance over survival. The suicide charge. The climax came at dawn. Surrounded and running out of ammunition, the smaller army launched an attack. Not a retreat, not a surrender, but a full assault. Veldar's heart froze as he watched men and women rise from trenches and charge into the teeth of enemy fire. Bullets cut them down in waves, yet those who fell were replaced by more. Why? An aide gasped. They know they cannot win. Veldar's frills lay flat against his skull. He could not answer, because there was no answer, no logic, only madness. And yet, the impossible happened. The larger army, expecting surrender, faltered. Their commanders hesitated. Their soldiers, unnerved by the reckless charge, broke formation. What should have been slaughter turned into chaos. By nightfall, the smaller force still stood, battered, bloodied, but not broken. The Admiral's dilemma. Word of the battle reached beyond Earth, into intercepted transmissions across human networks. Videos of the charge went viral, celebrated not as tragedy, but as triumph. Humans called it bravery. Veldar called it insanity. When he presented the report to Admiral Korveth, the Carthari fleet commander, the Admiral was not amused. Scholar, Korveth growled, are you suggesting these primitives pose a threat to us? We command fleets of 1,000 ships. They possess only fragile satellites and primitive warcraft. Veldar hesitated. Admiral, I am suggesting that their spirit does not follow the rules of war. They will not surrender when logic dictates. They will fight, even when there is no chance to win. That makes them dangerous. The Admiral scoffed. Dangerous to themselves, perhaps not to the Dominion. But even as Korveth dismissed him, Veldar could not forget the sight of soldiers laughing as they charged into death. The paradox of courage. Later that night, Veldar recorded a new entry into his journal for the Library of Carthar. Among every species we have encountered, courage is a calculated thing. The risk is weighed, the cost measured. But humans embrace courage as if it were instinct, not logic. They fight for ideas, for pride, for one another, even when the fight is unwinnable. They turn hopelessness into fuel. They defy fear with song. And when every rational being would submit, they rise. He paused before dictating the final line, his frills quivering in unease. I do not know whether to call this courage or collective madness, but I know this. It is a weapon no fleet can counter. The whispering fear. The next day, Veldar overheard his crew whispering. They whispered about the charge, about the humans, about what kind of species would choose death over defeat. Some were unsettled. Others were impressed. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity was not like the others. Veldar, gazing down at the blue world spinning below, felt the same truth gnawing at him. The galaxy had always believed strength came from order, logic, and stability. But perhaps true strength came from the madness of courage. And if that was so, then the galaxy had no idea what storm was coming. The unwritten rule. The Carthari library prided itself on order. Every species, every culture, every discovery fit neatly into categories, each entry a perfect reflection of cause and effect. But after months of observing Earth, Scholar Primus Veldar realized he was writing something no archivist had ever dared, a conclusion without definition. And worse still, the Galactic Council now demanded answers. The Council debate. In a vast chamber orbiting the Carthari homeworld, Veldar stood before the assembled delegates of the Dominion. Holograms shimmered, representatives of 20 star systems, scholars, admirals, ministers. Scholar Primus, the High Chairwoman hissed, "Your reports on the human species are troubling. You claim they are contradictory, adaptive, reckless, and dangerous. Yet they are primitives. How can they matter to the Dominion?" Veldar bowed his head. "Because, honored council, they do not behave as we expect. Every other species surrenders to survival. But humanity," he hesitated, the word itself bitter on his tongue. "Humanity surrenders to nothing." A murmur rippled through the chamber. An admiral leaned forward. "Then classify them. Threat or relevance." Veldar's 3 eyes shifted. "Neither, and both." Confusion filled the air. "They are not the strongest," Veldar continued. "Not the most intelligent. Not the most ancient. By every measure, they are ordinary. And yet, they endure what should break them, and they fight when they should fall. Logic cannot define them." The final journal entry. Later, in the solitude of his chamber, Veldar dictated what he knew would be his last entry for the human archive. Humans are paradox embodied. They fracture into nations, yet unite in crisis. They destroy yet create, hate yet love, despair yet laugh. No single word, no classification can hold them. Other species seek safety. Humans seek meaning. Other species yield to fear. Humans use fear as fuel. Other species fit rules. Humans make rules and break them just as easily. His frills trembled as he whispered the final thought. Perhaps the true definition of the human condition is that it cannot be defined. The whisper spreads. The council did not accept Veldar's refusal to classify, but they could not ignore the unease his words carried. Soon, whispers spread among the fleets, the ministries, the scholars, a warning about a young, confusing species on the edge of the galaxy. They do not kneel. They do not stop. They are dangerous. The rumors outpace the reports, and already the seeds of fear have been planted. The xenologist's realization. From the viewport of the immaculate logic, Veldar looked down one last time at Earth. Its cities glowed in the dark, clusters of light like constellations scattered on the surface of the blue-green world. He thought of the humans he had seen, arguing as they rescued his pilot, laughing as they charged into certain death, rebuilding where nature itself had tried to erase them. He had studied them as subjects, cataloged them as anomalies. But in that moment, Veldar understood the truth. Humans were not to be studied. They were to be experienced. And once experienced, never forgotten. The unwritten rule. Before departing soul space, Veldar etched one last note into the hidden annex of the archive, a message not for the council, but for future scholars who might encounter humanity. The unwritten rule of the galaxy. If you meet a human, prepare to be confused. If you fight a human, prepare to lose more than you expected. And if you stand beside a human, prepare to be changed. As the immaculate logic turned away from Earth, Veldar's hearts beat uneasily. The galaxy had not yet realized what lived on that small, fragile world. But one day they would, and when that day came, the galaxy would never be the same.